All aboard for 6 public transport related computer games.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm not Jeff Marshall, but I am at Blackfriars Station in London. And today on ChinnyVision we're going to look at 6 computer games on the 8 and 16 bits that involve public transport. I've only just thought about this video and making it as I walk past here, so this is going to work out quite interesting, isn't it? Because I can only think of like 3 at the moment. But never mind, we will persist.
Every young boy wants to drive a train. Well, I didn't, I wanted to drive a car. But if you're, say, Mr. PSP, you want to drive a train. And you can do that in Sprinter, aka the train game, but not the other game called the train game. It's a Dutch game by Acosoft, although the name Bytebusters and Eaglesoft also seem to be attached to it. Not an awful lot of detail about this game, but released on the C64 and the MSX, and we're looking at the MSX version. And let's read the instructions, and yes, they are entirely in Dutch, the language of Edam Cheese and Maywood. The two are interrelated. So I tried to use Google Translate to translate all this, and it didn't really work. But how hard can it be? Surely a train is just, you press a go button, you press a stop pedal, and open the doors and close the doors again. And just make sure you're running to time. I've seen Mr. PSP play Train Sim. It's not difficult, we can do this. Well, I have to say, dear viewer, it took me about 20 minutes to get the train actually moving, because it's not that simple. There's 2 speed controls and a lever. So, yeah, here we go. And first of all, you have to select your speed range, which is number 2, the Schnellheinz Kaisernoppen. A good name. And then you can press lever 4, which is the Vergrendel pole. And then the train will actually move. I don't know what the other controls do, but yeah, there is one where you can open and close the doors, and that's important when you're at the station. So off we go. There's no actual speed or a numeric speed shown, just that red bar. But that's a yellow, so I think yellow is proceed with caution. We've got to put a speed up. So we've got the overhead kind of pantograph type power line things. And we're presumably in the Netherlands, or it looks quite hilly for there. Oh, train station. Let's slow down. Let's slow down. There's some people on the platform. Have I stopped? I've stopped early. Well, I'm on the platform. Is it going to let me have that? No. Right, let's go forward a bit. Oh, it's a big person, a small person. Is it a child? Oh, hang on. Neat Tiger Gerbend. Druck up in totes. Apologies to any Dutch viewers. Let's try that again. Oh, so you start again where you left off. That's handy. So presumably still got the people standing on the platform. Yeah, so let's see if we can get the train into the station. Just gently roll in. And just ease off the speed. Stop about here. Stop about here. Is that about the right place? Stop. I've stopped. Open the doors. Apparently I need to wait for a bell. That's the one thing the Google Translate instructions did manage to tell me. No bell. Waiting for a bell. I'll shut the doors anyway and off I go. Do the right incantation to get the train moving. We seem to involve pressing numbers and then fiddling with the lever until we start moving. You don't want to go too fast because then the game gets upset, and then what happens is it gives you a message about how upset it is in Dutch and you have to start again. So it's still proceed with caution on yellows with that signal we just went past a moment ago. Another one. Oh, I'm going too fast. I'm going too fast. Going too fast. Oh, hang on. Neat Tidger Gerund, you have travelled 5 kilometres. I think that's what that bit says. So I've restarted again from the point it let me start. So again, another signal, yellow, going too fast. Oh, that's red. That's red. That's a really late warning on it, isn't it? Draw distance, so you just kind of upon it, and then it suddenly goes red. Right, so we wait. It's gone green, so now we can just proceed. No trains coming the other way, but I don't think we'd expect that on the MSX. And some quite small houses. Or they could be far away. Station up ahead. So I'm going quite fast. Oh, there's a little dog! There's a little dog. You don't get that in Train Sim. Right, just need to start. No, hang on, I've done something. Train is, guess stop. Miss stop, too fast through stop. Despite my appalling grasp of the Dutch language, I found Sprinter a lot of fun. It's something different. It's faster action than games like Evening Star and Southern Belle. And with those games, when you get it wrong, you have to go back to the beginning of the line, which could be an hour before, if not more. With this, you just go back a little bit and you start again from the same position. And the aim of the game is just to travel as far as you can. It seems to be a simplistic game, but rather compelling. But what if you want to travel on a train rather than drive it? Well, there's games where you can run along the top, like Stop the Express, but today we're going to look at Roland On The Run. And yes, it's by the coder who gave us Bridget and similar kind of controls in that accelerate the train, decelerate the train, jump. You've got 3 different controls for jumping. Yes, you are Roland out of Roland on the Ropes, Roland in the Caves fame. And like Bridget, you get to select many, many lives and different levels. And the graphics look quite like Bridget. And so your man flashes at the door and you have to jump onto a truck and then jump onto another truck and go to the hideout. And I've already lost 2 lives. I've got 1 person into that truck there, but every time the game beeps, I've lost a life. It's like a Game & Watch game brought to life on your home micro, but many times worse. It's difficult to work out why the game decides which character is flashing at any time. You just have to kind of run with it. So now I've got 1 flash, there you go, flashing on the left there. I'm just holding down the keys and eventually a gap will appear where I managed to jump. Down to 165 lives. And now I've got 2 different things flashing. I've got 1 person home. Somehow I got 1 person into the base at the bottom. It's like a terrible Frogger game with a train and a motorway. Well, a motorway, it's a road, isn't it? Because the traffic's travelling both ways, actually, isn't it? You've got 1 lot of traffic going the same way as the train and the bottom road going the other way. It's just, yeah, it's kind of terrible, really. But it's a game that if you've laughed at Bridget and think, how could it be worse than this? That in terms of a 1-screen game, then Roland on the Run is indeed far, far worse. At least at Bridget, you can kind of sit there and get into a rhythm of it. With this, you've got no real connection to what's happening on the screen. And you can just hold down keys and make your people jump into the trucks, and it randomly selects who you are. You have lost. We have all lost. So that's kind of train travel. But what if you want to travel on an underground train? Well, and here's a Jago Hazard shot, you can do that with Subway Vigilante. Now on the BBC Micro, Amstrad CPC and Sinclair Spectrum as shown here, the game is a rather poor Target Renegade clone where you merely walk along the platform beating people up. But on the C64 you get to travel on the tube between locations. And the idea is the game tells you where the trouble is. You jump on a tube train and navigate your way by jumping on and off the train and pressing directions on the joystick to get to where you need to be. The game will tell you at the bottom, it'll flash on the bottom display there, tell you the station you need to be at and the one you're currently at. You have to find your way there and you beat people up. And it's a rather interesting mechanic, and certainly the first few times you go through the tunnels with the animation, it's quite interesting. Yes, when you get to the platform, it's a Target Renegade clone, but not as egregious as certainly the Spectrum and Amstrad version. It's fun, and it's a quite good depiction of the London Underground. Although I can think of one game that has a better depiction, but you don't get to travel on the tube trains, although you do get to go on escalators and lurk around on the platforms. Yes, it's Werewolves of London by Viz Design and published by Areola Soft, but only briefly, and it came out at $1.99 on the Mastertronic label. And really, there's only one version to play. It's the Amstrad CPC. It was the first released, and it's pretty much the only one that isn't horribly, horribly bugged, although it does have bugs. Areola Soft went bust, and they did manage to get review copies of the Amstrad version out. Certainly, I remember CMVG reviewed the Amstrad version first, and the idea is you've got a curse, and by night you go around London murdering people to track down the people with the crosses who have cursed you, and by day you can innocuously wander around and the police will ignore you. And you can get a tube ticket, or you can just jump the barrier like this and go down into the tube. A bit quicker than real life, granted. So I've got a little cross flashing there. Now it's night time and all the police are coming after me, and the ones carrying the keys will lock me up in jail. There's no way out. There's no way out. What do I do? What do I do? Well, I could go down the drain, but I can go down another way. A way no one will follow me, because it's a bad thing to do. Yes, I've jumped onto the rail. And you have to do this right, because you get electrocuted and lose energy. And then if you've got the torch, you can wander down the tube tunnels. And there's no train, so you're not going to get run over. Now, I've advanced the game on. I've made my escape, and it's now daytime. But this is actually an essential way of getting between locations in the game, as well as the sewers. Because the map isn't all linked up. You do have to do things like jump over the roofs, go into the sewers, and use the railway tunnels to get between different sections of the map. You can use a ticket to get on the tube, but frankly you can just jump the barrier, and no one seems to care. Werewolves of London is of course enormous fun, well presented, and a highly enjoyable game, at least on the Amstrad, and I just love the fact the underground is depicted in there, and you can just go down the escalators and run around on the platforms, causing mayhem. Yes, I know it's a weak public transport link, but again, it's a nice depiction of the London Underground. Okay, so something where you can drive a train. Another game we've featured on ChinnyVision before, Thomas the Tank Engine, and I won't do my George Harrison impression, but you may say, Chinny, isn't this a cheap way of recycling some old footage? And I'd say, would I do that too? Yes, it is. But it is an arcade steam train game where Thomas has to go from one location to the other without hitting obstacles like, well, there's buffers there, so you've got to find your way through each map. It is a game aimed at younger players, although it doesn't stop it being enormously unfair. That was the C64 version you just saw, and here's the Atari ST version. It's much the same. Game published by Alternative, who love to cash in on, well, anything they could license that had a kids theme to it, basically. Must do Sooty and Sweep one day. Is it Sooty and Sweep? But on the ST here, I've picked up some carriages who probably have some names, but I'm not into Thomas the Tank Engine. What with being in my 40s. You have to go slowly over the broken rails. Oh, no. Yeah, the game doesn't really appear to stick to the rules of the railway in that other trains appear to be on the same lines as you and just start randomly reversing. But the aim is to get from the left-hand side of the map to the right-hand side of the map, doing whatever task. Oh, I've hit the buffers. Whatever task the Fat Controller's given you. Amstrad CPC version, which is basically the Spectrum version with a bit more colour and slower. And we're just picking up some carriages there. And we are literally chugging along. Oh no, that's blocked there. So I'm going to press the right button on the joystick, go up, and hopefully, yeah, there we go. Ended up there. It is a game, as I said in my original review, I think, that it is deeply unfair. And many of the problems with it could be solved just by a little bit more thought when it was coded. And while the Amiga ST, PC and C64 versions do manage to capture some of the charm of the original series, the Spectrum and Amstrad versions feel very basic. So Chinny, for the last game, do you have any bus games? Because you mentioned public transport, and the answer is I couldn't find any. Desert Bus was one I thought of, but it's so tedious. It's utterly tedious. So, of course, we'll have to do a proper train game, I think. And Evening Star is the sequel to Southern Belle by Hewson, a vector graphic-based game where you drive a steam engine from Bath to Bournemouth, which is 71 miles. So in Evening Star, you drive a steam engine from Bath to Bournemouth. Originally, of course, it's from London to Brighton in Southern Belle. So you've got 71 and a quarter miles to go. We're half a mile out of Bath Junction. There's many different difficulty levels, from a straight through run where you don't need to stop to having to stop at every station. With stopping at every station, of course, you also have to meet the time limits. There's also options so the computer makes it easier for you by looking after things like the fire and the water. So really, you're only having to worry about the basic controls of the engine, which, if you're starting to play this as a novice, you will appreciate. So going through a station, I'm not needing to stop. This is Midford, and like Southern Belle, it's the same engine, so there's no better frame rate. Best system to play this on, and this is the Spectrum version, is actually the BBC Micro version. It's pretty speedy. As we come towards Wellow here. Now I think is this a bit further than Evening Star? It's certainly hillier. It's certainly hillier than the run from London to Brighton, which makes the game a little bit more difficult. Because part of the game as well is conserving your water and your coal, because there's no refuelling during the journey. If you're looking at both of the Hewson games, Southern Belle and Evening Star, to start off with, to explore this, I would say Southern Belle is the better and easier game to get into. And then when you've tackled that, then come to Evening Star, simply because of all the gradients in it. And it just seems to be just that little bit harder. But then again, it's the sequel. Incidentally, if you're thinking this is a niche game, I've seen this listed in top 10 monthly format charts, so it must have been selling pretty well. So that's 6 games with a, let's say, public transport link. I really like Sprinter. It's a very basic train game. I don't think it even has any corners that I've seen, but it's fun seeing how far you can get before you get another angry Dutch message. It's a different world from the modern train sim game, but something you may like to play late at night. Roland On The Run. Next time you play Bridget, do not say it's the worst game ever. It isn't. For a start, Roland On The Run exists. It's not even like a Game & Watch game. It's like a grandstand game or one of those knockoff games in a market stall that are single screen. Those pop stations that Ashens plays. Any game that lets you have 255 lives that you can just burn through already knows by giving you that amount of lives that it's pretty dreadful. Subway Vigilante, well, it's a tenuous link, but I do love the fact you're actually travelling around the London Underground, getting on and off tube trains. Yes, the Amstrad Spectrum and BBC versions are a waste of space, but the C64 version with the funky music and the rather nice graphics, even if the fighting is a bit rubbish, I just like the fact you're going around real places and travelling around like you could in real life. Werewolves of London, one of my favourite games on the Amstrad of all time. I love it. I put so many hours into this game, and yes, it's just an excuse for me to show off Werewolves of London. But again, I like the fact you can go down into London Underground, you can take tickets off of people, go through the barrier legally, or just jump the barrier. And it's not just like a few screens of underground, there's loads of them. And there's underground stations all over the game. And you need to map it all out to work out what links to where you go into the sewers, where you go over roofs, and when you go through the underground. Thomas the Tank Engine is an alternative cash-in. The game has on the 64 and the 16 bits bags of character. It's a pity about those Z80 versions. It's a game aimed at younger players. No shame in that though, but the game is unfair across all these versions by just randomly inserting obstacles so you can't get past, or just driving other trains into you in a way that should never happen. Evening Star, it's a proper simulation of a steam train. You will need time, you would need patience to master this game, but Houston have done a superb job in making it accessible. That said, Southern Belle is the place I would start. Less gradients on the line. I just find it an easier experience. And I would say if you're going to play it, don't play on a Spectrum version like this. Play it on the BBC Micro, because it's got a far better refresh rate. I'd like to thank you for watching, and if you think any of my choices are bizarre or lazy simply because I already had footage of Thomas the Tank Engine and Subway Vigilante, put your comments below and I will read them, reply to them, or perhaps ignore them. Thank you for watching.